Greetings all, and we're back, I hope. That was a bit embarrassing. We started and Zohar had to tell me my mic was muted, so thank you so very much for that. I hope we don't have any more snafus, but we live for the scuff as VTubers, do we not? Alright, so, as I was saying, I hope if anybody's interested in writing, that this will help you. I will not be going through contests, novel submissions, stuff like that, because while tangentially related, they are not completely related. So, I don't want to give you blue balls and not start, so I'm going to start with slide 1, which some of you already got a little peek at. My apologies. Uh-ohs. I popped away my chat. Can we make the chat come back, please? Oh, I love this. I'm doing this half blind, so. Alright, there we go. My chat's back. Sorry, everyone. I guess I magicianed you away for a bit. And I did it again. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, I'm a professional, remember. Slide 1. Before looking for places to submit, make sure you have final drafts. And I mean final drafts. Things you have worked on a while. Things you have shown people you can trust who will give you balanced feedback. I mean someone who doesn't tell you, oh my god, everything you write is shit. And I don't mean somebody who's a friend of yours who's going to be like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever read. Over everything you write. You need your cheerleaders. You do. You need people who will say to you, yes, this is it. It's amazing, even if it isn't. You need people to buoy you. But when you're looking for feedback to improve a piece, you want accuracy. You do not want an ass kisser, nor do you want someone who will tear you apart to the point where you don't want to pick up a pen again. I've had both of those types of people in my life. You don't need the second kind. And the first kind, your cheerleaders, are great, but not for feedback. Thank you very much, Zohar. You're a pal. You're a mensch. Seriously. Okay, so if you can, join a writer's group, find a mentor, or take a class. Or workshops, sometimes they're called. Workshops are different than classes, because in a workshop you write and then you workshop the pieces where you give them to each other and you kind of critique. A workshop environment can be very helpful for a writer, but when you're getting your toes wet in this, I don't recommend it. Because right now, if you're just starting, you should be learning a lot of different stuff for yourself and studying by yourself. So your source has to be a trusted source. Read voraciously in and out of your genre. If you do not read, why do you want to write? If you do not read the words of others, you do not ever find anything you want to read. I don't know why you want to write for a living or even as a side hobby. It's okay if what you read is something you're very particular about. Some readers are very picky. That's not a problem. But if you don't read a lot and write a lot, you're not going to get very far. I think that was Stephen King's advice to people if they want to be a writer. Read a lot, write a lot. And that's true. Some people say write every day. I don't necessarily agree with that because life gets in the way, and especially if you are disabled, you are chronically ill, some days you wake up and you just feel like, fuck this, I can't. You shouldn't try to force yourself through that, especially if it's a longer project where you have a story with a plot line and it needs some finesse. Well, so just keep that in mind. I don't prescribe to the write every day. I do prescribe to the write a lot. And a lot can vary from person to person, depending on what your life is like. Craft books can also be helpful. And the last part in section 1 is literally to back up your writing. And I cannot tell you how many times I have lost poems, stories, essays, articles, all the things I've been working on. I've lost hundreds of poems in my career. Hundreds. I have lost countless backups. Well, it depends on, like I said, you don't have to, like, you can be very picky about what you read. So you don't have to say, oh, well, I only like this kind of book, so obviously I can't be a writer, but you should be reading. Even if it's like shorter stuff. You know, maybe you don't like novels, maybe you like poetry, or maybe you like essays, or maybe you like books on a pandemic, but not romance books. Or maybe you like comic books or manga. Those things are reading. Audiobooks are reading. So don't let people tell you, oh, it has to be a capital N novel. It does not. So it helps to make a folder specifically on your device for your final drafts so you can find them easier. And title each work. I know some people like to go untitled. Poets are very, very, very asshole-ish with this. They're like, oh, well, it's about the non-existence of man with turkeys, so if I title it like An Invisible Sonata, it will actually be a liminal space to hold. And I'm like, no, fuck you, dude. Name it something. And it's partly so you can find it later on. Or number it. A lot of Emily Dickinson's poems weren't titled, but she also like threw them in a fucking trunk and almost never published in her fucking life. And if you want to write for yourself, go right ahead. It's a perfectly valid thing to do. I've written poems and then I've ripped them up. I've written poems I've destroyed. I've written essays that I was like, oh my god, that felt good. I've lit them on fire. Safely on fire. But I've done it. Okay? And also keep a document with the title and relevant info like genre and word count. You don't think that's important until you get like 70 or 80 poems, 50 short stories, and you're like, which one is the gentleman caller versus which one is the night stalker on acid or something. It all depends, and when you get that many poems or that many stories in a document, you will be glad, especially if you don't have very creative titles, that you know what you have in front of you. I can't tell you how many poems on my poem list now where I'm like, which poem was yes? So you don't want to do what I've done. Plus, finding yes in a sea of documentation, do you know how many times I could probably use the word yes somewhere? So it's very hard to even find. Okay, get your biography ready. And most of the time that is a third-person biography. So my name being Toluca Turtelli, it would be Toluca Turtelli blah blah blah. And sometimes if you're writing in different genres, you might want different biographies. And part of that is, especially if you've gained some publications under your belt, some people might not care about your zombie apocalypse poem when you are writing a story about veterans in World War II. So sometimes you have to do that for more appropriate clips or credits, as they sometimes call them. Okay, and you might want a cover letter template, but we'll get to that later. So you don't have to worry about that one right away. But as you start submitting, trust me, it cuts down on your time. Alright, I think that's part of everything. Although for file backups, I have a CD rewritable and a flash drive here in my apartment. So I have actually 3, which helps me out. Okay, I'm going to click on 2, which I pray to God that I do not fuck this up. There we go. Okay, so say you have your final drafts and you want more than one piece at a time, because when you send out, especially poems you need a bunch. Stories are usually one at a time. So if you want to send out a lot, which you do because this is a numbers game, and I'll get to that, you need a whole bunch of stuff going in. But this is where you start. Where do you find your markets? This right here is everything I have used ever to find any place I have submitted to, and you're welcome. The biography part is because they're going to publish your biography when they publish your work. And it helps sometimes direct people to you. Because as a writer, you also want to be found by your audience. So part of the biography, I don't want to say is advertisement, but sort of. Sort of. You want people to kind of get to know you if they want to follow your work. Some editors will ask you for your social media links. And if you're doing writing seriously, you will have some under your writing account. Even if you have, like, being a silly turtle on the internet, you also have super serious poet page. So you need that for that kind of thing. So, where to find markets? Writers Weekly is more for freelancers. I haven't used it myself much. One thing I do want to let you know is if you are more of a conservative politically, I think the people who run it are more conservative. So they might be someone who has more of your interests in mind. So that is something to take into account. Because as you are a writer, a lot of writers tend to skew liberal, or they don't say. So it's just something to keep in mind. But sometimes they're more of one thing than the other, and you don't realize it either. So Kathy's Thompson Calls is from the UK. She does a monthly list with fee-free stuff. And when I say fee-free, it means you don't have to pay a submission fee. And you're going to say to me, well, wait, Toluca, what the fuck? You mean I have to pay someone to submit to them? And that is a whole can of worms in the writing community, the literary community. And I could probably rant for a good 20 minutes about submission fees. My short answer is a lot of magazines want you to pay submission fees. Not all of them will. So you can find a lot of magazines that will not take your money, and a lot of magazines also do not pay you. So that is something else to keep in mind. Poets and Writers is a huge resource for writers. It has a magazine. It has a freaking like nonprofit attached to it. It's huge. So PW is the one. And it has a literary magazine database. I think there's a grant database even for writers, and a small press database. And small presses are usually the ones who publish books, but they're not one of the big 5 or even one of the mid-tier publishers of books. Like the big 5 is like Penguin Random and stuff like that. And the middle one is like, I think McCourt is one of them. I don't know, but I don't publish much, and poets do not get, for the most part, the shiny big 5, maybe soon to be big 4, if the lawsuit doesn't come of anything, publishers. So small presses are the way we have to go. Raylan is for the speculative people out there. You have a horror short story or something, or science fiction, flash fiction. Raylan's your way to go. Authors Published magazine has articles and a bunch of other stuff too. Trish Hopkinson's blog is just for poets, but it's amazing. She keeps like these posts for how to know if your poems are ready, blah blah blah. So it's advice mixed with markets. Funds for Writers has markets, grants, contests, everything. She also has a newsletter attached to it. Publishing and Other Forms of Insanity. Now, this is one of my holy grails, and I will tell you why. It's not a database, so it doesn't have search parameters, but it's an amazing resource because every month there are fee-free contests in one post, and there are fee-free like magazine calls for poetry or short stories and stuff in a different post. I think the new one for July just dropped. She has over 100 opportunities for you to potentially find a place for your work. And it's all types of stuff. Sometimes it's even a little speculative heavy, which is okay by me. But yeah, and then she maintains a master list. She has agent listings on her blog where you can actually look at what agents are looking for if you're a novelist. I have a whole spiel on agents too, but that's not the time. But yeah, there's just a bunch of different stuff. There are pluses and minuses with a market database. Because market databases, you can usually narrow down what you're looking for, whereas a list is just what they're reporting. So each one has pluses and minuses on that one. So that works out for that one. Okay, I have to switch over my notes. Give me one little second. Yep, okay, so yeah, the search fields are actually very helpful. But the only thing on here that costs money to use is Duotrope. Duotrope is by month or by year. I forget how much it is a year, maybe $50. And it's $5 a month, but some people swear by it. It is a submission tracker, so if you don't want to make your own submission tracker, which I don't recommend using a website to do that as your only submission tracker anyway, I find Duotrope a pain in the ass for it because every single poem I have to put in separate each time, and that always ticked me the fuck off. But they also have a calendar of themes and stuff, so it can be a really helpful source if you want to put out money, but remember not to put too much money into your work unless you're getting something out of it, if that makes sense. Okay, I just clicked something else. Hopefully that didn't fuck me over. I will try to get it fixed. Alright, so now I can try to go to slide 3. 1, 2, 3. Wait. Okay, this is it. Determining if your work is a good fit. This can be a hard one, admittedly. And all my tips here might not actually help you all that goddamn much. But first of all, you make sure you fit the requirements. Make sure they take your genre. Don't send poetry to a market that just takes stories. That they're currently open. A lot of places close down at least through various parts of the year. They aren't restricted by demographics you don't fall into. There are some magazines who want work from black and brown people only. There are some who want work from the LGBTQIA plus community. Some only want like disabled or neurodivergent writers and artists to work with. So always make sure you're not being that person. You know, that person that like says, oh, this type of person has this, so I'm being discriminated against. So don't be that person, please, please. Okay, read the magazine. Most publications have samples or full issues to read online for free. It will give you an idea of stuff. What poetry they like, how long their stories typically are, though you can find that in the guidelines generally as well. If they prefer more plot or character heavy narratives, if they like to publish like older protagonists or younger protagonists, like, oh, I noticed they don't have a protagonist older than age 40 in their issues. Maybe, just maybe, my work with an 85-year-old, like, bird-watching octogenarian isn't going to be, like, good for them. And I know I just fucked up somewhere, but I'm just going to keep plodding on. Okay, and if an editor lists something as a hard sell or pet peeve, heed it. They will at times tell you, like, they do not want any, like, child abuse. They don't want any talk about politics. They don't want this or that. So if they tell you that and your story involves child abuse at a political rally, please do not send it. This will not result in a yes. This will just waste everyone's time. And you don't want to waste time because it takes a bit to get your submissions out in the world and your work done. So you don't want to do that. Okay, determine what you won't put up with. Will you pay a submission fee? Some writers think it's okay. Some writers think it's never okay. And you have to decide. Will you submit via snail mail? A lot of places, it's mostly email nowadays. But places that have snail mail and email as an option, or a submission system as an option, will make you pay a fee to submit online. And then they will just tell you, well, you'd have to pay for the ink and the stamps and the envelope and all that other shit when you're submitting to us. So technically it's about even. And I guess kind of, sort of. But by the same token, it's like, fuck off. Like, I don't know. There's a whole difference between an optional fee, because there are some that give you like the option to pay, and some that are just like, we want you to pay just to get rejected, basically. Okay, I think this is where we're at. Alright, I have given you an example here of some guidelines that require you going through email, because a lot of literary magazines still take email submissions. So this is from Banshee, which is a lovely little Irish journal. So Banshee welcomes submissions from both Irish and international writers of any background, including first time. So they're welcoming to the first time emerging people. So it's not something you should feel totally intimidated by. There are magazines where you will feel intimidated because they are very heavy into the big hitters, and you know they solicit half of these people for like whatever is in their magazine, and that just leaves less chances for you. So yeah. So they welcome work from members or communities underrepresented within literature, which means they are a safe place, but they are not an exclusionary place. So all submissions should be previously unpublished. You will find that statement in almost every literary magazine or journal you submit to. And they mean, a lot of them mean, not even on your blog or Instagram or Facebook. No sharing it publicly. If you are behind like say you have a writers group and it's a closed group, or you're in a Discord server that has a section that's private, it's different. But if you have something on an open forum, even if it wasn't anything published in a magazine, they will not take it unless they consider reprints. So you have to think carefully as to what you're going to submit where and why and when. Okay, our guideline word count for stories and essays is 5,000 words max. They don't mean 5,500. If you have a story you want to go here, you have to be within the length limit. You can potentially try to edit down the words, the word count, or if you're adamant that it has to be 5,500, don't submit here. Some people will say there can be exceptions to the length limit, and that's fine. But if they are adamant that this is all we will accept, do not send if it's longer. Some places also have a minimum word count. Like, don't send anything under 1,000. So, yeah, it is true. A lot of this is self-promotion. As a matter of fact, when you... Okay, I'm a poet primarily, so this is from my experience. They told me, they tell all poets out there, they're like, hey, poet, yeah, you who's not going to make us any money because poetry doesn't sell. Have you published in literary magazines before you sent us this book? Are at least a few of them published in literary magazines before you sent us this book? We want to know where you sent them before. We want to know where they've been before. We want to know if you've done your work. So if you are a poet who doesn't have your name out there, who has never gotten any of the poems published before in that book anywhere else, they will probably not look at your damn book. They will not even look at it. You could be Shakespeare's baby, and they will not look at it because they do not care. If you didn't get past what they consider the gatekeepers, at least some of them, or first readers, which is what some publishers consider lit mag editors, which I think is kind of derogatory in a way, they won't touch it. They won't look at it. Because you're supposed to be laying the groundwork for an audience. You're supposed to be laying the groundwork for people's eyes on your work, people to know who you are. You should be doing prep work so that other editors know your name, because the editors who published your poem like a year ago that's in that book, they might promote on their site that you got your book published, because a lot of editors want to say, see, Toluca Tertelli, she got this amazing book deal and she had a poem in our magazine, so we know how to pick them. So if you send your work to us, you're one step closer, potentially, of course, for getting picked for a full book, for a full-length collection. So you want to be here. So it is kind of a symbiotic relationship to have an editor who will publish you to go back and help you, perhaps, not always, promote your book. I have a lot of issues with like the quid pro quo that goes on in the literary community, but more like the nepotism and more like using your friends to get it in at a publisher than for an editor to say, hey, one of our contributors is doing something amazing now. I think that's a little different because that helps you and them, but in not a scummy way. I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, back to this. Flash fiction should be under 1,000 words. That is not unusual. Flash fiction is actually under 1,000 words, although you will occasionally find someone telling you under 750 or under 500 is the limit. So 500, 750, 1,000. 1,000 is usually the upper ceiling people use for flash fiction. And all flash fiction is literally a short story under 1,000 words. That's it. Poems of no more than 40 lines. Yep. Poetry gets a limit too, but not as often word count wise. It's more by line. Just like when the editor wants you to give a word count for your story when you send it, they will more likely ask for the line count for a poem. So, yeah. Submission. Okay, we're happy to read one story or one essay or 2 flashes or up to 4 poems. Yeah, I was jumping ahead. That's your limit on how many you can send. So 1, 2, or 4. If in doubt, there are industry standards. And 4 poems is generally the industry standard. Some people will read 3, some people will read 6. But if you don't have a number of poems, it's usually 4. Short stories are usually 1. Same with essays. And 2 to 3 flash fiction are usually the upper limit of what you can send. But flash, you can usually send more than a short story. Because, of course, it's shorter. Submission should be in 1 doc or docx attachment and in a non-quirky font. I will get to formatting in a bit, but most people want Times New Roman. I have been asked for Courier New. As a matter of fact, I just sent out today to someone who wanted Courier New. Please include a third-person bio, max 50 words. Told ya. Some are 75 and whatnot, but that 50 is a common motherfucker. If you're sending prose, please note the word count of the piece. Yup, that too. Email to, and then it gives the email written out in a weird way. They do that to avoid spam. Because if you have your email address written out in public on the internet, the likelihood a bot will get it and start sending you a whole bunch of shit is a common one. So include the category of your submission in the subject line. Usually when I send a submission via email, I usually do submission, whatever the fuck category it is. Submission, fiction, or short story, or whatever. We're happy to consider simultaneous submissions. A simultaneous submission is when you send to Banshee and then you send to other people at the same time. So say it was like Banshee, the Massachusetts Review, Cornhole Weekly, Book by Book Lover. You send out to those 4 simultaneously, it's fine. We ask you notify us as soon as your work is accepted elsewhere. That is a standard, and we will get into that. We believe in paying writers. We offer contributors a small fee as well as a copy of the journal. In this case, they're not American, so their word fee is payment. They offer you payment. So they will pay you and give you a copy of the journal, which is not cheap, especially if you're an international writer, so that is very nice of them. And we cannot offer feedback on unsuccessful submissions. When they mean say feedback, in this case, they don't mean just telling you if it was rejected. They mean they can't sit down and write you a note saying, I really liked your main character, but your side characters were cardboard, your ending was unbelievable, etc. They can't tell you what drew them out of the story. Some magazine editors will give you feedback. A few will do it for free, but most it comes with an optional fee. And to get feedback from an editor sometimes is worth paying the fee, but it depends on who you are, how the story or whatever you're writing is going for you. It all depends. And money factors way big into that too. I'm not going to spend too much time on my next slide. Hopefully I click on the right fucking thing. Nope. That's not it at all. Hold, please. Where the fuck am I? 3, 4. Is this the right one? I will find it. Yes, it is the right one. Good, good, good. Okay. This is another submission, but this time it is on a submission system. Meet Submittable. She is now your mommy. She is now your bitch. And she is one of the reasons a lot of magazines now charge a fucking fee, because it costs money to take submissions through Submittable. Long may she reign. So you go to their site, you read their guidelines as per usual, and then you will click on something that will take you to this thing. The guidelines are still over here on the left, and then you get down and there are categories: poetry, fiction, nonfiction, visual arts. And yes, a lot of literary magazines will consider visual art pieces as either interior or cover art. So if you're an artist, especially a visual one, or a visual artist nowadays, but not a visual one, forgive me, a digital artist nowadays, they do need artists for a lot of different things. They usually just get it out of the slush. They don't always have like a staff that does the covers, like in a newspaper that would have like reporters with, you know, all of the photos already as part of their package for reporting. So if you are a visual artist, this could work for you too. So they have poetry and all that stuff. You can actually click to see the guidelines better, or you could actually click on that little black arrow by the category you want, which will take you to the right. And I put poetry. You can see how long ago I prepared the slide, because it said at the time, ends on June 30th in 5 days, gives you the specific genre guidelines: poetry of any form, word count 500 lines for each poem, or words, sorry, not lines. That would be a long ass poem. No more than 3 poems in a single document, and a submission period. Now, why submission period is important is because some places, when you get rejected, if they're still open, you can send to them right away. But not these people. They're like, 1 batch per submission period. We don't want to hear from you until the next time we open. So you have to heed that as well. This is my one shot till they open up again. Even if they reject me, like say in 5 hours, I cannot send to them again until they open again. So do not include any identifying information in the file or in its title. They do not want to know who you are in the document itself. This is called blind submissions. And they think it causes magazines to have to look more fairly on their potential contributors. If I don't know your name, if I don't know where you're from, it gives you a fair shake. Now, there's a debate in the literary community, too, if that is the way to go. Some people say it is not. If anybody wants a video, I will explain that, but we'll move on for now. So, the red asterisk in Submittable is required. A title is required. Your biography goes right there. It is required. Again, it says brief third-person bio, so that means that 50-word third-person thing we keep talking about. File to upload. You click on that, you find your file, you attach it. Underneath here it tells you the document types, so you know not to send a different document. You know sometimes you have to do the save as feature. No identifying information should be present on the document or the title. They keep telling you that because a lot of people don't fucking listen. That's what a lot of these guidelines are, actually. A listening or reading comprehension exercise. They want to know how well your ass can follow directions. Sometimes it's a necessary thing. I believe this magazine believes it's doing the right thing by not wanting your information on the document. They think it gives everyone a fair chance. However, sometimes you will come across guidelines that have such weird fucking requirements, you do not know why they picked what they did. At times it almost seems like they are trying to weed out people who do not read the guidelines by making them very convoluted and multi-step and very out of the norm. Like I want it in 11 size font, not 12. I want only half-inch margins. I want like the first page double spaced and then the next one should be single spaced. They do some really far out stuff sometimes. And I'm just like, I'm not understanding why. Like, I get if, like, the editor has vision issues and needs a certain font that's out of the ordinary. I know everybody hates Comic Sans, but it's one of the fonts that's good for dyslexia, let's say. Okay, so I have read and agreed to Inklet's editorial plagiarism rights and permissions policies. Some want to make sure you read everything before you submit to them. And then how did you hear about Inklet? That's optional. There is no red check by it whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, which, please God. Okay, I think Germs to Know is the next one. And I will just run through them quickly because I do have them on the screen. Blind submissions are where there's no info on the document itself or in the document title. So don't title it like 5 poems to Luca Turtle, for instance, because they don't want to know. But yet, they will have to know, like in the body of your email or on the submission system itself, but not in the title of the document and not in your document itself. Exclusive submissions, you cannot simultaneously submit this. You have to keep it to one place. I don't really like this unless they can guarantee you a fast turnaround time. And the reason is, sometimes with literary magazines, it could be 6 months. It could be a year. You know? Yes, exactly. There are different fonts better or worse for dyslexics or people with eye issues, but I'm not an expert on that. I just know Comic Sans, a font everyone shits on, is actually somewhat better for some types of dyslexia. So it is something to keep in mind. They're not always asking for shit out of the ordinary just to be contrarian. Okay, so since exclusive submissions means you can't send it anywhere else, you have to wait for a response. And yes, sometimes they figure it out, especially if somebody else you SimSub to and you shouldn't have accepted it. How are you going to pull it without them knowing that you were not doing what they said? But I always make sure they are a fast turnaround time. If they say, we will return your submission back to you within like 4 weeks, I'm like, if I like you enough, I'll let you have 4 weeks. If you're going to make me wait 6 months to a year to 2 years, fuck off. Fuck right off with that shit. You are making me wait. If you did nothing but exclusive submissions for a story, say a story gets rejected an average of 7 times. I'm pulling this out of my shell. I have no idea. And say everybody made you wait a year. That would be 7 years to see one story of yours in print. No, fuck that. You do not get exclusive shit from me unless you can guarantee me it's quick. Anyway, simultaneous submissions is the opposite. You can send anywhere you want when you send to them. It's all good for them. SASE is self-addressed stamped envelope. When you send stuff out via the mail, you have to send your manuscript with your cover letter and your envelope to have a yes or no brought back to you. You will usually not get your manuscript back if you sent it through the mail. So that is a lot of paper and ink you use if you do it via mail. And if you want your manuscript back, you're going to have to bring or give them enough postage to send it back. They will pay nothing to send it back to you. That falls on you entirely. Okay, multiple submissions. Sending more than one story or in multiple categories. Some places are like, yeah, you can send us poetry and a short story at the same time. So then you can send in both categories. That is multiple submissions. Reprints. Previously published work. You got something published a year ago and then you send it to someone else. So most places don't but I do have a list somewhere of people who will take reprints because I do believe thoroughly and completely in getting as much mileage out of your work as possible. You worked very hard on that story or poem or essay. Get it back out there, get it going. And when we talk about rights in a moment, I will talk to you about which one you should probably wait for last. Because when you give rights to people, you are technically licensing. Remember the term licensing from like Hollywood? You're licensing the rights to your work. Okay, kill fee. This is mostly in freelance writing, but I have dealt with it as a short story writer once or twice. An amount of money paid when the editor decides not to run a piece. When an editor decides not to run your piece, it's generally called killing it. I've killed the story. It says, like, Jameson, I guess, from Spider-Man. You know, I've killed it. I killed the story. And since you need that money, and you weren't paid up front to write it, you're usually paid either after acceptance, but most commonly after publication. And trust me, from acceptance to publication can be many months, if not years different. You need an insurance. It's a type of insurance that says, if my story doesn't run and I'm counting on the money, they will at least pay me a percentage of what they would have paid me for the article or whatever should it have ran. You will not usually find a kill fee in literary type of writing. It's mostly for freelance, like when you like write for like Men's Health or whatever it is. Contributor copy. When you have copies of the magazine, they give you one for free like they would for Banshee. Banshee gives you a copy of the magazine your work is in. So, yeah. Submission fee. Money paid just for your work to be considered. If you want, someday I will rant about that, because I have very strong feelings. Submission system. Portals to submit your work through. Submittable is most common. We've already looked at Submittable. But there's also Green Submissions, Moshka, Google Forms, some people use, and a whole bunch of different ones. They kind of work the same way. You fill out your information, you choose a password, blah, blah, blah. Unsolicited submission means getting submissions from the slush pile. Just you, an average Joe, submitting to them. Just apropos of nothing. You see the open reading period, you send it in, that is unsolicited. If an editor goes up to a famous writer and says, hey, do you want to submit a piece for our issue? That's solicited. Slush pile is submissions from random writers. It's just the big deluge of random ass writers who send it in. Some people think the term slush pile is a little bit not nice, because it makes it sound like it's just a bunch of crap at your door. But be that as it may, we are now on to rights. And I do have on the bottom a link for anyone who wants more in-depth information, because I am not a lawyer, not by a long way. I've just been doing this a long time. First North American serial rights, the right to be the first publisher to publish something once in North America. It's the first rights. Actually, a lot of literature doesn't even pay. So, a lot of literature does not involve a kill fee at all. It's mostly just for magazine articles. I can tell you so many magazines that are amazing that don't actually pay you anything. And yes, some will just fold under without even telling you. I've had that happen before. I've been accepted somewhere and they just fucking closed their doors and I didn't even know. And I was just supposed to look at their social media or something. So It happens a lot for one reason or another. Or they forget they've accepted you. I've had that happen too. Thanks, I guess I'm not forgettable, or my poem's not forgettable. But yeah, no, they only do kill fee and freelancing, generally. Or magazine reportage, as far as I know. Like I said, I've met one or two magazines that do it, and the editors of those magazines, the ones I've come across were the speculative people. Sometimes you get paid a little more often in speculative work, in my experience. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but people who write horror, fantasy, sci-fi tend to get paid a little more often than literary work, which is just like nature writing or whatever the hell else, like a nature poem or like "And I Never Got Along with My Father" poem or whatever. That's a literary poem, just to be like really obtusely simple about it. So the first North American serial rights is first to be published in North America, first European rights, first to publish it in Europe. Usually they word this for print, but it depends on the magazine. But usually if it's a print magazine, they will ask for the first North American or whatever rights. So if you have a magazine that wants the first North American, and then you can find an Australian magazine that takes first Australian rights, you can give both of those first rights, I don't want to say away, you can license both of those rights to them. First worldwide rights means right to publish worldwide once. So just simultaneously worldwide. I've seen this on some websites, because even if a website exists in a specific place, the web is, of course, World Wide Web. Archival rights, the right to archive it online so that people can go back and find it. Now, this is a little tricky because some people don't like this. And some people don't like this because, let's say you have let's say it's a story. You have your story published in a good magazine that's online. And say there's another one that publishes reprints that's only in print, and you really want to send the reprint to a place because they're going to give you a decent payday even for a reprint. Since you have it online, archived for anyone to find, they might not want to take your reprint, because why would your piece be a draw to their publication if somebody could just read it online for free? And I'm not saying it happens like that all the time, but what I am saying is when you're an editor, a publisher, whatever, you have to consider, well, what happens if all the reprints are readily available? So sometimes when people take reprints, they will say, I will take your reprint, but it has to be physical copy, hard copy journals only. If that makes sense. Because they don't want it everywhere to find it. Excerpt rights, the right to publish part of a work by itself for promotion or other. Other could be if you had one of your stories in a very high tier journal. Let's call it high tier. I'm not sold on the tier system, but we'll do it. And they contact you and say, hey, I'm just letting you know that one of the standardized tests is going to have a portion of your story on it to test kids' reading comprehension. And they can sell your part of your story to the school district or whatever in order to do that. And since you had already sold the excerpt rights, that's something they can do. But for the most part, excerpts are for promotion. Very rarely will I find a magazine that does anything with excerpts other than promote. So, something you got to keep in mind. Anthology rights is just the right to publish the work in an anthology, usually paperback, but not always. First/worldwide electronic rights is another way to say, for online. But first worldwide rights can be different than first worldwide electronic rights, but sometimes people use them interchangeably, if that makes sense. Because basically they're doing the same thing. Okay, all rights. They take all of your rights. This is rarely worth it. I don't like doing this, because rarely can they pay me enough to make it worth my while. I don't think I should give you anything. Now, to be fair, I very much doubt someone is going to take my poem and make $1 billion off of it. I don't. Or a short story for the most part. I don't. But I don't want to have to go back to the magazine in about 2 years and say, hey, I'm getting ready to publish my collection and my poem is in it. Can I print my poem? I'd have to literally ask them to print my poem in my book because I gave the right to reprint the poem to them. And I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with that at all. So, freelance licensing may be more grabby. There might be more rights they have to take due to syndication or something or other. Plus, freelancing a lot of the time is paid somewhat. Literary magazines, you hardly get paid. But if you're careful, you can. And that's another thing about publishing and other forms of insanity. I think when she puts out those lists of places, especially like the markets that, like I said, this month has over 100, I think they all have some kind of pay attached. So if you're looking for not just fee-free, but stuff that might pay you, definitely look at her list. Okay, never submit anywhere that takes all rights on submission. They're not even taking all rights when they accept you and pay you for those rights. They would literally be taking your work on submission. The minute you send it, it's theirs. So that means you don't have to win their contest. You don't have to do jack shit. They can just take it. And if they offer you a good enough prize, I am assuring you now, people will not read it and they will be like, well, of course you can have all rights if I win that $10,000 or whatever. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying submissions. And I have seen at least a couple of very high profile magazines, and I'm going to name names right now. Oprah Magazine was one that was doing, I think, an essay contest that was very rights grabby like that. And I was like, the fuck you say, Oprah? You're a billionaire. Why do you need to put this in here? But I digress. Ahem. And now I'm going to get a cease and desist from Harpo Productions. Bring it on. You know what you did. Okay. If I click the next one. Okay, that's not the right one. Hold on. Hold on, please. Okay, I think we're good. Next is about preparing a cover letter. It's not a death sentence. It's just being a whore. They're a very big whore. And you should never do it. And when I talk about all rights and you're like, well, it's a good payday, whatever. Look at if it's submission or acceptance. Look at that first. Because if it's submission, you're literally, you might as well just go to your neighbor and say, here's my award-winning story idea. It's yours now, Todd. Like, literally, it's like that. It's like doing that. Exactly like that. You might as well just literally be giving it away to some rando. So, it's not good. I mean, if you're writing just an essay, I very much doubt you have to worry about it. Another thing I don't like about it is they can change your writing when they have all rights to it at points, or edit it in such a way that makes you sound, let's say, different than you are. So you have to watch out for that. And editing in general, but we'll get to that. Okay, pointers for cover letters. Try to find and use an editor's name in your greeting. Sometimes they don't give you a specific editor, and then you can just name the, like, Dear Banshee editors or whatever. It depends on. What you're looking for generally is the masthead. The masthead has the editors and whatever. Use the managing editor's name if no genre-specific editor, unless told otherwise. Yeah, there can be, like, publisher listed, but publisher is the person that owns the magazine and does the day-to-day. You're looking for the managing editor, not the editor emeritus or anything like that. Managing means they're the ones that do the nitty-gritty of the deciding and all that. But oftentimes, a magazine will have genre-specific editors. Like, here's your fiction editor, here is your, like, video editor, all that. So you can narrow it down. Always thank people for their time. They are busy. They are getting a deluge of submissions. Be nice. Keep it short. Don't get cocky or boastful. And I have seen this a lot. My story is the next Don fucking Quixote, motherfucker. Like, they will literally say stuff like that to you. This poem is so good. It's like listening to Sia and Allen Ginsberg fucking. Like, that would have never happened, but you get what I'm saying. They tell you how amazing it is. They tell you how amazing they are. I am the next Rumi. I am the next whatever. And don't do that. And don't even try to be the next one of those people. Try to be the first you. I know people say that, but I don't want to be, oh, you're just a copycat of fucking Maya Angelou. No, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. I want to be me. If you have genuine praise for a piece in the publication, give it. But nothing insincere. So if you are reading the magazine to find out the tone of the pieces and whatever, and you read an essay that just blew you the fuck out the door, like it was so good you had to change your pants after you read it, because you either shit them, had an orgasm, I don't care. If you really loved it, say you did. But if you didn't love something, like immediately or intensely or whatever, don't give false praise. Oh yes, there is a saying about writers, and it's like something like good writers copy, great writers steal or something. And they don't mean plagiarism. They just mean taking your favorite things from a writer. Like if you like the way somebody sets up their atmosphere in their story, you could try to like make your story like more atmospheric. Or if you like the way like Danielle Steele writes sassy characters or whatever, which I don't know if she does. I haven't read one in a long time. Just go with me here, okay? And you can take that from her. You can draw inspiration from others. It works out well. And that's one of the reasons why you should know what other people are writing, because you'll be like, oh my God, this fight scene was great. Let me deconstruct that fight scene so I know how they did it. I want to know how they did it. So, yeah, look into that. It can be in the first page of your document, but not for blind submissions, because we said no personal information on blind submissions. Yeah, you should look at what makes something tick for you. That is a whole different stream, and or a video I could try to, do if anybody would be interested. Like the ways you can look at someone's work and take it apart to see if you really love someone's style. Like what parts of the style do you love? Is it the way they structure their sentences? Is it the way they end every scene, like with something impactful? Or is it the way they describe what's happening? Is it the fact that they're using more touch, and smell sensation in their passages than, let's say, sight, which is what a lot of people use. A lot of people use sight words. Like, she was blonde, she was this, not, I felt the air, whatever. I don't know. I'm just, yeah. So I could always talk about that sometime. But that is a good question. But you should always look at other people's work, and if something doesn't speak to you, that's just as helpful. Why didn't I like this book? What made that character so horrible? Why did this sidekick seem so flat? Why did this world seem like a world that I've read like 8 million times? Was it the spaceship? Was it, just look at stuff. Sometimes critically. And if you can't put your finger on it, just come back to it. Or let yourself mull it over. Like, I don't like Edward Cullen because he's a sullen-year-old fucking 12-year-old wet dream, basically. And he's supposed to be like sex on legs that sparkles like a diamond. But he's really this sullen little baby back bitch who shouldn't even be in high school anymore. Can't they make those 17-year-old kids at least age up in documents to 19 so he doesn't have to go to school with people his great-great-great-great-granddaughter's age? But I digress. It's important for you to know what you like and what you don't. So, your cover letter could be in a box on a submission form or in the body of an email, which is usually where I put mine. Don't stress about it too much. It's rare your cover letter will be the deciding factor for an editor. That is true. A lot of editors don't even read the damn things, or they only read them after they accept or reject you. So don't stress about it. Don't try to do anything ostentatious with your cover. No wingdings, no emojis, nope. You can be very bland in your cover letter, very straightforward. Your story, your essay, your whatever is what has to shine. And if you stand out with your cover letter, most likely it's going to be in a bad way. Like, I've seen people... Oh, hang on. 1 second. I have to mute. Mute the microphone, please. Sorry about that. We had a neighbor come by because they had our mail. I don't think it's one we even know, but I'm not sure. Okay, so pointers for biographies. Mix interesting and appropriate fact or two about yourself with a professional background. I will give an example of a cover letter and a biography in a minute. Keep it fairly brief. We've discussed that. Genre-specific bios can be helpful if you write in more than one. We've discussed why. Always update your biography when necessary. Where you are as a writer this year will not be where you are 5 years from now. You do not need to keep the same publication credits in your bio. You might have a different job. You might have a different partner. Whatever you listed in there. For instance, one of the things I do is I change up my publication credits to something more recent because that'll help. If people want to find you, it'll be easier for them to find you in Fuck You Quarterly, where you were published last year, than I Don't Give a Fuck Review, which you were published in 3 years ago. So always try to keep your credits current. Or things that are going on in your life. If you want to write about your partner, your new partner, then you might want to update your biography. Or if you mention your partner and you got a divorce, you might want to not have your partner mentioned anymore in your biography. So always keep it updated. Add a social media link at the end of it if appropriate. Some editors will request them separately. They will not all do that. So if you have like a Twitter or a Facebook or whatever specifically for that, then consider that. Okay? Do not lie on your biography. If you don't have credits to list, you don't have to list them. You can just say other stuff about yourself. The people will find out if you lie. But pseudonyms are different. Some people, they write in a genre that their family would not be proud of, or they're very professional and them writing romance in their off time would not be seen as professional, so they have to create a pseudonym to keep their writing life separate from the rest of their life. And that happens a lot. And then there are some writers who will write in one genre and then want to switch genres, and because Susie Sunshine went from writing children's books to writing vampire erotica, she has to use a pseudonym because she doesn't want people picking up the books for the children, and it's not about the time Tommy Tortoise won the race. There are pros and cons to pseudonyms, something else we can get into sometime if anyone else would like. I do not use one, but I have considered it. Alright, here are the examples I promised you. One is not mine, but one is definitely mine. And I highlighted the one I wrote because I wanted to point out a few things. I probably should have pointed out a few more, but the top one says, Dear Fiction Addict Press. See, they didn't have a specific editor they wanted named, so you just say, Dear name of the magazine. That is a fine way to go about it. Or, Dear editors of whatever the fuck magazine, or whatever. Do not just say, Dear editor, if there are editors listed. It makes you look like you didn't do your homework. Thank you for considering my work. See, I always thank people. I am an emerging writer with only a small smattering of published pieces. You can tell people that, or you don't even have to. If you think that it would be a detriment to admit that you are a newbie, you don't have to add it. I appreciate all the time and attention my work receives. To me, that's a little thick, but I look forward to hearing from you. Not a bad thing to say. This is a simultaneous submission. Always tell them if it's a simultaneous or exclusive. You want them to be aware up front what you're doing, because they do not want to accept a piece, and then when they tell you, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that Suck My Cock Monthly took the fucking poem last month. They took it last month, last year, whatever. And you're just finding out now. A lot of editors have to go through that, and they don't like that. So I always tell them if it's a sim sub. I'll withdraw the piece immediately if it is accepted elsewhere. That should be common knowledge. I do not add that to mine. I am a writer and graduate student in the MA English program at Redacted University. My work has been published in Redacted and is forthcoming in Redacted. I live in Redacted with my fiancée, Jane. Okay, that's part of their cover letter. I usually just do the biography at the bottom of the cover letter. To me, it's the same thing. So that's one way to do it. And the source I gave you, where I got this cover letter from, gives you more pointers on cover letters I might not have covered. So if you want to find it, it might be worth a read. It's from another editor at, of course, Fiction Addict Press, which is not my publication, but I know of it. So mine says, Dear Editor Brown, highlighted because I know the editor's fucking name and I should use it. Thank you for taking the time, always thank people, to review my short story, Turtle Boogie, which is how many ever words long. Some people want to know in your cover letter the word length if it's a story. It is exclusive to your publication. I'm not sending it anywhere else. I'm letting you know that. It's probably because you fucking told me you don't accept simultaneous submissions, but I'm going to be a good girl. I quite enjoyed Reggie Cat's story, Soccer Cat Strut, in the last issue. If you did enjoy it, tell them. If not, don't. Regards to Luca Turtelli, and then my contact information, at least my address, which is, of course, not my address. The reason I put USA with an asterisk is because when you're submitting to an international journal, it is helpful to do your country of origin. So USA, basically, if you're going to send to like Banshee, which is in Ireland. And then on the bottom it says biography. Toluca Turtelli is a poet from another galaxy who relocated to Earth to investigate the paranormal. Her work has appeared in Pearl Remix Journal, Shell Clothes Magazine, and Bikini Top. She met her penguin husband at a sandbar in the Atlantic. They stream video games together as a hobby. Short, sweet, to the point. Some of it is personal, some of it is professional, and Bob's your uncle. So, neither one of these stand out in amazing ways. They are very simple, very straightforward. Okay. Now, we go to the extra fun part, which I fucking hate with my entire being, manuscript formatting. And some people have their own different ways of doing things. But standard is 1-inch margins, which should be your default in your Word program. Times New Roman font, size 12. That is the standard. I promise. Yes, I have leaked the plot of Madagascar 4. Me and BJ met at a sandbar. Okay, so for prose, which is stories and essays, a lot of times it's double spaced. They want, where you have a line as space, another line. And poetry is formatted as it's intended to appear. So if you don't have double spacing in your poetry, you don't put it usually as formatting. There are exceptions, but for the most part, poetry is how you want it to appear. Prose is double spaced with indented paragraphs. Your contact info and name should be on the top left of the first page or in the header. Unless it's a blind submission or stripped of personal information, then do not do that. Do not do that at all. Sean manuscript format is quite popular and similar to the above. In Sean manuscript format, at least for poetry, the titles of the poems are centered while the body of the poem itself, is left alignment. I gave you the URL here, but you can always look it up yourself. And a lot of people, they require it. They even required it from me just today. So I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. Popular file types for writing are doc, docx, and PDF. Oh, it's fine. How are you today, ACP? We're just talking about formatting your manuscript for literary submissions. Fun and exciting stuff, I tell you. If you're going to be submitting art, it's JPEG or PNG, but with 300 DPI. Now, I don't know why, but I know why they request DPI. But it's very difficult for me to figure out DPI because I'm not an artist to begin with, but a lot of them do request DPI, or at least a certain size resolution. So if you are an artist who are going to submit to a magazine or an anthology, keep in mind your, specs, I guess I should say. If you don't have access to the file type they want, message them asking if a substitute is okay before sending a strange file. Because you can be suspicious and they can actually reject you because they did not ask for that file type. Because you can get a lot of viruses from taking submissions from anybody over the internet. Weird, right? Read the guidelines carefully. Different editors can want different things. We've already discussed editors and their strange ways. Some will give you very detailed what they want, and your job is to follow it, just like always. All right. So now you have your cover letter and your bio and your final drafts, and you've read the guidelines, and you tweaked everything just so, and you sent it in, or you sent a bunch in. Now, this is the submission log I alluded to in the beginning. You need a submission log. You will forget where you have sent things if you've been sending a lot. If let's say your one story gets rejected 14 times, are you going to remember when you're sending out 25 other stories where those 14 places were that rejected your first story? I don't fucking think so. Not unless you have a memory that rivals God's. So, you need a submission log. Most people use Excel, an Excel table. I use a Word document on the computer. And I do that because I don't do tables. I've never been good at setting up an Excel spreadsheet. Not once. And you can still search, and it'll find it just the same. So, mine reads something like this in real life. The name of the magazine, the date we sent it off, the titles I sent off, and anything else I have to know. And extra notes can be helpful because you need to remember if something was an exclusive sub, so you don't fucking touch it and send it somewhere else. We talked about what a no-no that is. Or if the editor was really nice to you last time and told you got close, you'll want to send to them again. And the one on the bottom, bikini top, says when the response came in and that it was an acceptance and which poem they accepted. Another thing I recommend doing is having all of your stuff in that master document I mentioned. And working cross purposes together. I know cross purposes means at each other's throats, but you're supposed to always cross-check between the two. Because I have a master document with all of my poems and stories on it. As I send out, I move them from the inbox field to the outbox field. And then I have a list of what I've sent, and what's left up above I can still send out. And then I have my submission document, or my submission log, separate. So I have a document where I can easily see what's available for me to send out, and then I do the submission log. The way I do it isn't always the most efficient, but it works. You can also keep a paper submission log or a paper master list of your of like all the things that you need, but you don't have a search feature there. And as you write it down, you're going to kind of get things mixed up and crossed out. To me, it's easier to do it electronically. And when I tell you to back up your writing, I also mean back this fucking thing up. You do not want to lose your submission list. You do not want to send a story you were rejected with a year ago to the same place. And yes, there will be the occasional story of some jackass writer who forgot, who sent it to somebody else 2 years down the road, and it was accepted. And then they're like, see? The reason it was accepted is because there was probably a different editor or something else going on. For the most part, do not resubmit stuff you've submitted somewhere knowingly. Unless they tell you, I want you to rewrite this and send it back. Do not do it. Do not send them it re-edited. Do not send them anything. And for God's sake, keep track of what you've sent where by using something like this. So, next slide. So you got your submission log figured out, and you're waiting around, and my good golly gravy, it's been like 10 months, and they said they'd get back to you 4 months ago. 6 months is their maximum. You can do the follow-up query. Okay, response times can vary to a couple weeks to over a year or more for magazines. Very true. If a publication lists a response time and hasn't gotten back to you, most will welcome a query as to the status of your work, unless they state on their site, and some do have this, that you're just rejected by a certain time. I have a few places out right now, and it's like, if we still haven't gotten back to you by the end of July, well, fuck you, you're rejected. I don't usually send to those places very often, and it's because they can get backlogged, I can move on, and then they can come back to me a year down the road and say, do you still have that poem? We finally got to it and we liked it. And I'm like, you said if I didn't hear from you, like how many ever long ago, that I was supposed to just go fuck myself and move on. So I always like knowing they're going to reject me. But if there is an important opportunity that doesn't give out rejections, then I go for it anyway. Because I am a silly fucking masochist. Alright. Since magazines can be jammed, give them a grace window. Some writers wait an extra month. So if they're like, we'll get back to you in 3 months, they wait 4. I use time and a half. 9 months when they say they need 6. It's all up to you. But grace periods are never a bad idea. Yeah, I forget a lot. That's why I have a meticulous system. And I think if you submit a lot, you will forget. It's just how it goes. You're dealing with a lot of documents. Are you really going to remember? You sent, like, right now, I think I have 36 batches of poetry out. 36. Can I list you every place they are right now? No. Can I list you every place I've sent them in their lifespan? Fuck no. So you need to be meticulous. Or at least have something that generally works for you. Make sure they haven't closed permanently before firing off the email. I've actually gone to Twitter and found out the editor said, hey, we closed, go fuck yourself. And that actually, oh my god, I think I went through that last week even. Where I was like, they've had my stuff since 2020. And it's like, well, we went under. If you haven't heard from us, it's obviously a no. So I'm like, okay then. So use the method they list to contact them. They will say, for a query or withdrawal or whatever, contact us by this email address or whatever. Title it something like submission query so the spam filter doesn't eat it. Because when you're dealing with a literary magazine spam filter, it gets pretty bitchy sometimes. Which is why when you're submitting through email, I always tell you, label it something like submission, whatever your genre is, unless they tell you different. Some places want you to go like genre, your last name, whatever. But just follow what they say or it can be lost to the ether. Tell them what you sent, like, hello, Editor Brown. My name is Toluca Tertelli. I almost said my real fucking name on stream. That was horrible. Thank you very much. And I sent you a packet of poems in like April of last year. Your guidelines state you should have gotten back to me. Can I have an update? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. You know, and then just sign your name and get the fuck out. And just send it off. So, be polite. Don't be like, hey bitch, where the fuck is my work? Aren't you supposed to tell me yes? Then you have to wait some more. There will be occasions when you'll have to chalk your submission up to lost, which is another reason I recommend sending out a lot of work, because that way one submission or 2 or 3 going astray isn't going to have you waiting forever. You will get responses and send more out. So it'll just be one of the many balls you have in the air. Keep your balls in the air. Withdraw your submission if you think it's lost using whatever method listed. And the reason you can write a last email and say, I'm going to withdraw it by the end of the month if I don't hear from you because I followed up. Just be nice about it, but be accurate. Just tell them honestly, I haven't received a response. I'm thinking my emails are going astray, or that you rejected me and I didn't get it. And I'm just going to make sure. So by the end of the month, if you don't get back to me, maybe not the end of the month, maybe the end of next month because we're almost out of this month, I'll just say that you rejected me. Submission systems are less likely to get things lost, but you can be rejected without getting an email. And I've had this happen too. On Submittable especially, specifically Submittable, we're talking now. Because remember, Submittable is our submission mommy, long may she reign. Long may she cause people to start fucking charging you just to say no. But anyway, you will sometimes get rejected and then have to go to your rejected tab. And trust me, if you're doing this right, your rejection tab will have a lot more than your acceptance tab. Okay, so you get a response and it is the fires of hell. You are rejected. This is going to happen to you. It's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to Stephen King. It's going to happen to J.K. Rowling, which we don't like her, so we're going to just say, go away. But this is going to happen with everyone. Everyone who's ever sent anything. Even if they've written the best book you've ever read in your life, they've faced rejection, and they're going to keep facing it. It's a long game. Art is a subjective thing. Two people can look at one painting. One person can be like, that's derivative, that's hideous, that's whatever. And some people will be like, that speaks to my soul. It's like that with every piece of art. It's like that with every movie. Yeah, I don't like her. I don't like her at all. But that's a whole different topic of discussion. The bigoted, transphobic little ninny. I'm going to just leave that there. But when you get rejected, this is a numbers game, people. If you have 100 out, you will get some acceptances, almost guaranteed. I think someone said, I don't know if this is correct, 2% will be acceptances if you're a general writer. I do not agree with 2%. I think it's higher. But that should just tell you, if you have 100 out and they say you'll have about 2 acceptances, that tells you the kind of game you're playing here, people. Even though it's not a game, it really does hurt when you get rejected. It's that severe. You are more apt to get rejected. And if you get too many acceptances, you could be good, or you could be shooting too low. There are magazines that have less competition and are more beginner friendly, which you should definitely start there. Or, maybe you're shooting too high if you never get accepted. Like this Premier magazine, that's like everybody's dream magazine. You're trying to get the money shot from that magazine and like nobody else, hardly. Just that kind of tier. Well, then you're going to get rejected a lot more because you're aiming at the New Yorker or Poetry magazine and they have very low acceptance rates. Some magazines, especially on if you pay for Duotrope, will tell you the percentage of acceptances they get. They'll be like, we can only accept like 0.5% of what we receive. So you know the difficulty of getting in that door. So it's just that it is what it is. And it is going to hurt sometimes. And you will think you're a shit writer. Even writers who've been writing for years will get a rejection they were really hoping for, and it knocks them on their goddamn ass. And they're like, I'm a shit writer. I'm a shit person. Why am I doing this to myself? I should just fucking quit. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a hack. And trust me, it happens. I got a rejection yesterday for my book. Not just a batch of poems. My book. The book I put my heart and soul into. and I've been trying to get published for so fucking long. I got another rejection on that fucking book, and my brain is like, just pack it in. You're no good. No one wants to read this shit. You're done. And it's like, no, that's one place. Just one. Calm your tits. So I did. But do not send a nasty email to an editor or demand to know the reason for the rejection. You will get blacklisted if you are an obnoxious asshole. Guaranteed. And editors make friends with other editors. Isn't that weird? So when you are an asshole to, let's say, I Love Turtles Monthly, well, Tortoises by Year or something is also friends with them, so they will not even look at your shit. You will be on a shit list. An absolute shit list. So do not do this. Do not. Do record the rejection in your submission log. You need to know they rejected you. If you need to vent privately, do not do it on your social media. Do not name names. Everybody gets rejected. It makes you look petty, childish, unprofessional, just all kinds of things. Take a night or so until the pain fades. Watch a movie, blah, blah, blah. You are not your work. Your work was rejected. You were not rejected as a person. Send it somewhere else when you're ready. One rejection doesn't mean the piece needs more editing. It can be an indicator after 12 rejections or so, but art can get a yes 10 years down the road with no changes. I've had that happen. I believed in a piece, and I kept at it, and I had one that was accepted 8 years after I started sending it out. 8 fucking years of me sending this thing out and getting it boomeranged back to my fucking face. And I found a home for it. I actually got a rejection that was really nasty on one of my short stories. Really, really nasty. And it said all kinds of things about how my prose was basic, barely proficient, how it was a horrible, mean-spirited story, and it was supposed to be dark. It's a horror story, okay? It's dark, I get it, but they said so much about my lack of writing skill and everything like that. I'm like, I'm never submitting this piece again. But then I found another magazine out of the way, and I was like, you know what? I might as well send it there. They took my piece. No edits. The editor there, she loved it. She didn't say, oh my God, this is horrible. Where did you learn to write? Hacks are us? So it literally is subjective, and it literally does depend. And God, that felt good. Let me tell you, to see one person going, yes, this is my gravy, baby, when somebody else was like, you're barely proficient prose and mean-spirited, disgusting story. Yeah, that felt really good. But I did not, I will repeat, did not send the editors who gave me the nasty rejection a told you so letter. I felt like it in my head. Like, yes, suck me, suck my tits, suck my puss. I don't care. But I didn't tell them that to their face. I was just like, I got it. And that's all you need to know. Some form of rejections are tiered, so you can get a hint if you were close to the yes. Some literary magazines, especially those like higher up or affiliated with a university, sometimes they will give you a tiered rejection. That's why on the bottom is the rejection wiki. People can report different rejections they've received and to see if it's something very unique or something known to be given to people who got close. If a magazine rejects you and said, good luck with this or good luck placing this elsewhere, you were probably not that close. If it says on the bottom something like, please try us again, they are not blowing smoke up your rectums. If they ask you, please try us again, they want to see more work. They do. Editors do not want to make themselves have more work than they need. So if they're telling you, yes, please send more work in the future, do it. Record that in your submission log. with whatever you need. Highlight it, whatever. Just be like, they want more work. Send them more work. I can't tell you how many times I've heard editors say, I told this person I wanted more work from them, and they never sent me a fucking thing again. It happens a lot because writers get discouraged. They see the no, and what they don't see is not this, but please. So please remember that. And if a editor writes you something personal, like gives you feedback on your story, that is gold. Writers don't usually get that because editors don't have the time. If they're looking at like 1,000 submissions every month, they do not have the time to sit down and tell you what they liked or didn't like about your story. So it's important, except of course when you get the personalized fucking rejection, that cuts into your fucking soul. I wouldn't know why I would say that. Okay, acceptances should be the last slide. This is what you're hoping for right here. This is your holy grail. Your acceptance. Your beautiful, pure acceptance. This is what you do when you have it. If it's a simultaneous submission, you withdraw it from every other place first thing. Do not respond to this editor. Go to every other editor, however they say to withdraw your shit, and you do it. You do it now. You do not want to create a situation where another person says to you they want something and it's not available. That does not make an editor feel good. Pull it. Pull it fast. Pull it respectfully. For poetry, just pull whichever poems were taken. Because sometimes, if you send 4, only one is accepted. So you just tell them, hey, Stray Cat Strut is unavailable, but the rest of them are available still. So don't wait until other journals respond for a better yes. And I don't know why I have to say this, but I've had this happen to me as an editor. Somebody got a poem accepted into my publication. Good for them. Happy for them. Love that for them. Especially because even though we don't pay much, we are actually one of the few that pay something. And I say few, there are a lot of them out there, but a lot of them don't pay you anything. So, she tells me, we'll call her M, or Mary, we'll call her Mary. Mary tells me she wants to submit to other magazines until it comes time to be accepted or published. And I'm thinking to myself, say what now, Mary? You're not supposed to keep sending out something that's already been accepted. She did not mean as a reprint. Mary, freaking Mary, meant as the first rights to that poem. She wanted to give higher tier, better magazines a crack at the poem I accepted because she wanted it somewhere else. If you want it somewhere else, do not send to me. And I will tell you that for every editor. If you would rather your poem be somewhere else, do not send it to the place you don't want it. So, yeah, that's very unprofessional. And Mary probably took my yes and told another editor, well, you know, this editor wants it. So do you? Because if somebody else says yes to a piece, sometimes it makes the piece look better. So she probably tried to leverage that. And good for her, she found someone. She found someone else. Now, let me ask you a question out there. Anybody who's listening to me rant and isn't fallen asleep yet, do you think I'm going to be considering work from Mary in the future? Just take half a guess as to whether Mary will ever appear in my magazine. Ever. If I don't have the poll ability, but if you answered no, no way in hell, fuck that, that is highly unprofessional, you are correct. Mary will never grace my publication because I will remember her unprofessionalism. All right. Don't get snarky when you pull your poem or story from other editors about missing out. Don't be like, well, if you were fast. Thanks, ACPA. But yeah, don't be like, if you were faster, you could have got my work first. Don't be like that. Then respond to the place that accepted you with an enthusiastic thank you. Update your submission log with all the new information, the acceptance and the rejections. Or what you pulled out, I should say, your withdrawals. So you're not still waiting on stuff that never happened. What I do, because I also have the list of pieces that are final drafts that I'm sending out, I actually delete it from my final drafts. Now, not the document itself, just the title from the one page. Because remember, I told you I have a page I cross-reference that has all the titles on it that are ready to go out with where I kind of sent them and then the submission log. I get rid of the title from the master list, we'll call it. However, you might want a third list, and that is to put it on the list so you can sell your reprints or license the rights, I should say, that haven't already been picked up. So in like 6 months, say you want to give a reprint to a reprint place, and you're like, oh, okay, I remember this got published, so I can send this out as a reprint. Because I believe in trying to get your work published more than once. But just remember to know your rights, which ones you've already given away or sold, hopefully sold, and which ones you still maintain. Okay, now be open to the possibility of edits. Some editors are very hands-on. 99% of editors get a writer's okay before changing anything significant. It pisses me off when they don't get my okay, but most editors are really good for this. Letting you know. Really think through what the editor says before accepting or rejecting their requests. You might be rejected if you don't agree. I've had that happen. I had a poem and they wanted something. Okay, actually, this is a great one. And I'm not going to give you the name, but it's a speculative magazine. I've worked with an editor at a speculative magazine. She wanted to take my poem and make something that was basic in that poem the surprise twist. Okay, I'm just going to say it because I don't want to make a different scenario. I have a poem about elderly werewolves. And the twist is not the thing, because it's not a twist poem. It's about their love for each other, even as they age. That's what it's about. Basically, two aging werewolves that still, at like the end of their anniversary party or whatever, they turn into wolves, and then they go running off together, or limping off together, because they have like mobility aids when they're humans. And the editor thought, you know, this is a great poem idea, except what if you didn't know they were werewolves until the very end? Like, what if you like heard the howling and there was the party and like you didn't know? And I said to her, no, that's really not what the poem focuses on. It's not what it's about. And I said, I can't make those changes. And she said, okay, thank you, I respect that. And did not publish the poem she accepted. Because when you do not take the edits, they do not have to publish you. Some still will, but some won't. It all depends on who the editor is, what you're fighting for. Now this same editor wanted a different poem of mine. And it was, say, 14 lines, and she only liked the last 3 lines. And I looked at the poem and I said, you know what? I think she has a point here, because the tone really changed between the first how many ever lines and the last 3. And I'm like, okay, we don't need those first 11 lines. And I legit cut away every line except the last 3. So I got rid of 11 lines of my poem. Because I could see where the tonal shift was and that she was correct. So what I'm telling you is, don't say no because your ego gets in the way. Like, no, you can't touch my baby. It's perfect. And also, don't cave and say yes for a credit. You need work that you can stand behind where your intention stays true. But you also should really think over what they say because they might have a valid point. So don't let your ego get in the way and don't cave for a credit. Don't cave for a byline. Don't let them totally twist something that you would not want your name associated with or take away what you really thought the heart of the piece was. A lot of editors do it because they just have a different idea of what the piece should be. Not because they're assholes. Okay, and then the last thing I have listed here is you can wait a long time to see your piece published. And you can. An editor can take your piece in like today, the 29th of June in 2022. And you might not get to see that sucker published until February of 2024. Lead times can be really, really long. It depends on several factors. Most literary magazines don't have over a 1.5 year lead time, which is the time between acceptance and publication, but some do. So that is something to be aware of, especially and specifically if you are supposed to get paid and your payment is not on publication or acceptance but publication, excuse me. If you are getting it on acceptance, you can expect it, of course, soon after they accept you and they get your details. But if it's on publication, you will be waiting until that issue goes live. And if you're waiting on a paper check, even longer. So that is something to consider. So that is basically my entire presentation for today. Me yammering about guidelines and manuscript formatting and acceptances and rejections. And I will tell you honestly, last year my acceptance rate was 22%, I think. And I'm not saying that as a wow moment. I'm just saying that's incredibly high. I do not normally sustain that. Normally I send out, I think between 80 and 90 submissions a year. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And I think I get about 6 to 10 acceptances. And an acceptance can just be like one poem out of like the 6 I sent. So it is really, really a numbers game. And perseverance actually can matter over talent. The most talented person in the world will not get anywhere if they give up within the first 3 months. But the son of a bitch who is only half as good, but who keeps honing his craft little by little and plugs away and keeps sending no matter how many doors are shut in his face, he has got bylines. He has got complimentary issues of the magazine he's been in. He's got bragging rights or a little bit of cash. You're not going to get rich off this. We discussed that. But he has what the other guy wanted with only a fraction of the talent the other guy has. So persevere. When you think your work isn't good, persevere when you get rejected. Just keep plugging on. And it's going to hurt sometimes. And you're going to be like, what the fuck am I even doing with this? I have those days. And I've literally been writing since I was 9, publishing since I was 10. And I'm old as fuck now. And I still have the days where I don't even know why I'm doing this. Because, like it or not, we're all doing publishing for some reason. Publishing to find an audience, publishing for money, publishing for fame, publishing for something. I'm always looking for my community. for somebody to read what I write and go, that resonates with me. I understand that. I understand her. It's kind of why I stream in a weird way. To be like, yes, that is a kindred spirit. That is someone I resonate with somehow. So for me, I'm always looking for community, but also a little bit of that validation, that V word, the thing that should come from within. But usually we look for it other places. So keep on trucking and ask me any questions. This will be up here for a while. This will be archived on YouTube. So you can ask me questions in the comments. You know what my Twitter is. It's Toluca Turtle. Just find me on there. Ask me anything. If you want a follow-up video on anything, tell me what you want a follow-up video on and why. Like I said, I can talk about pseudonyms or how you legally steal from people's style or whatever it is. Alright, thanks so much for watching. I talked for 2 straight hours and fucked up a lot, but I hope it helped you somewhat. Take care, everyone. We're doing Sonic Mania on Friday. Same bad time, same turtle channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate all of you so much. You have no idea. And if you start writing, let me know. Bye.